All right, everybody, welcome to Hi Happy Hour. It's Friday once again. I don't know why I feel like this has been the longest week, but it's been a crazy week. Um, Before I bring on my guest extraordinary, who I am so thrilled we finally found a time to do this, I want to make a couple of quick announcements about various things that are going on, and then get right to it because tonight's show is just going to be action-packed and so much to go over. So first of all, yes, plans for the home entertainment show, The Show in Long Beach, June 10 through 12, is in full swing. Rooms are selling like crazy. We've got world premieres, we've got product premieres, we've got a whole bunch of really cool stuff. The ambassadorship program has officially launched. We've got a bunch of really great folks that are on board. Watch this space and the show space next week for those announcements. And I'm trying to think what else I can tell you. There's a launch coming for that Hi-Fi Girl next week, but I don't want to say too much about it. So you will receive the information when we are ready to talk about it. And somebody is now spamming me on my Apple Watch. Anyway, what's everybody drinking tonight? Cheers. So before I bring on my guest, I want to go over the house rules. As you all know, this is Hi-Fi Happy Hour. I am that Hi-Fi girl. And as such, my rules are no trolling, no harassment, no sexual harassment, obviously. And there's no such thing as a stupid question if it's an honest question. I have followers that are all levels and places along their journey in audio and in music. And some folks just like to hang out and listen to new conversations. So if you see somebody asking a question and you think, what the heck? Don't think that way. Just assume that they're new or they're learning or they're interested. And let's have a really welcoming, safe space where people can explore and talk. And it's okay to disagree as long as we're respectful. And also, y'all know this is a one strike, you're out zone. So if there's anything distasteful or that's not classy that's said, you're out. And you're out for good, not just like you're out for the week, you're out forever. Okay, wait, Pinot Noir we've got beer, NY Grasshoppers drinking beer, Audio Acoustic Engineering's got Pinot Noir. Hello. Oh, Matt, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so I'm just going to say hi, Matt. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so let's get to it. My guest tonight, I'm so excited for this. My hi-fi sister, my pro audio recording sister, Cookie Marenco of Blue Coast Records. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She has been in the recording industry for I don't know how many years, over 20 years or 25 years, which is hard because she's only 28. So I'm not sure how she did it. Maybe she's Doctor Who. She has 2 gold records to my knowledge. She may have more since the last time I checked because she's always pumping stuff out. There's 30 albums, I think, that are available through Blue Coast Records. She developed a new recording technique called ESE, which has gone on to be one of the most highly acclaimed ways to record. We're going to talk about that. And what else can I say other than she is a ginormous advocate for hi-fi, audio education, music, musicians. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, friends from all around the world, my hi-fi sister in arms, Cookie Marenco. Hi, Cookie.
Hi, and cheers.
Cheers. How are you? Okay, what are you, first of all, what are you drinking? Yeah.
I'm drinking, don't be fooled by the glass. This is an old mayonnaise jar.
Okay.
But I made my own cherry tequila and added a little bit of kombucha, and that's what we have here today.
So obviously me and my whole crew will be up there shortly, right? That is, you make your own tequila?
Well, I don't make the tequila. What I do is I get some really ripe cherries or different fruits. Like I make peach vodka. It's just whenever, actually I grow I'm a gardener, grow a lot of fruits and vegetables.
Nice.
And then when I have too many, I just put them in a jar with some alcohol of some kind and see what happens.
Yes. I am the same way. I will put fruit together with jet fuel, nail polish remover, whatever. It's fine.
Oh man, I found an old bottle of 151 rum that I don't even think is available for sale anymore. But I found it hidden in the back corners of my liquor closet.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so I took it out and I thought, oh no, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But I think it ended up on some cherries also.
Nice. 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 And so when you use cherries, you use like the dark red cherries, right?
I do. So it takes on that. It just pulls all the color out of and
Nice.
the flavor also brings it in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. How do you get any work done like that?
Well, I only drink during the happy hours
Fair
with
enough.
you. And I'm actually not that much of a drinker. I kind of like to go to sleep early and wake up really early.
I know. That's something, it's so funny because I think everybody assumes that in the music industry, people work the other end of 9 to 5, right? So 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. And yet there are people like us that are like, we'll go to bed at like 8:30 and then wake up at 5:30. And
Yeah.
that's fine. We get more done that way, uninterrupted, you know? So,
Well,
all right.
yeah.
Yes. No, tell me.
Oh, I was going to say that in probably the early years of recording, and also when I was playing in a band prior to that, yeah, there were a lot more late night hours. But as I started putting the clamp on 24-hour sessions,
Yeah.
and then brought it down to 12, and then 10, and then 8, and then putting a limit on it at, we got to end by 10 o'clock.
Right.
But oh yeah, and as far as how long, we're actually celebrating our 40th anniversary for my opening the studio.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
I know it's hard because I'm only 28. So
It's true.
I mean, what happened? How did that happen?
That's amazing. So, okay, I want to talk to you about I sort of want to work backwards because I want you to tell the story of how Blue Coast started and everything else, but I want to start in present day because you know me, you and I are very similar in this way. I like to troll the audiophile, the post boards, right? Like on Facebook and stuff late at night, have a little bit to drink, and then just start looking for, those troublemakers. And I love, like, half the time I start typing something in a comment and then I scroll and then it's like, Cookie Marenco, listen, you shithead. Like, you don't know anything about, why don't you come to my studio and I'll show you real gear. Stand down, idiot. And I'm just like, don't need to type it. She already said it. We're good. I'll move on. So I want to know the first thing, because this is a real treat for me to have on somebody who truly understands the music creation side into the listening side. Why do you think, I'm just going to come out swinging, why do you feel like in audiophilia world, right, there's so many people that lack the understanding, and so they say things like, pro audio better catch up with, with high-end audio soon. Like, they don't know what they're doing in the mix and they don't have the good speakers and, they don't know anything about gear. Why is that?
Well, it goes both ways, I think. My first 20 years were really dedicated to pro audio, and made a lot of buddies, had no problems, walked the walk, did the talk. And then somewhere in the early 2000s, I met the son of a speaker manufacturer named Jean-Claude Renaud from JMR Speakers. And he said, you're an audiophile. I said, I don't even know what that is. So he started explaining this to me. We ended up coming up with it. We were both frustrated as where the recording industry was going.
Yeah.
We founded Blue Coast Records together on the premises of, really delivering a high-end, tracks. And what I discovered was, going back to pro audio, very few pro audio engineers either understood what the consumer market for audiophile was.
Right. Yeah.
Or didn't want to make the investment in time, let alone the money required to get the gear together. Or I think they just didn't want to know. And I can't blame them. It's a big investment. And so, the reality is that mainstream music is more centered around, in the 2000s, delivering MP3s,
right,
CD quality WAV files. So there wasn't a lot of attention to a higher resolution file.
Sure.
So when I got to the audiophile folks, and they kept pushing, saying, we were recording in DSD in the early 2000s. And finally, Gus Guinness said, Cookie, you got a store. We opened a store actually in 2008, about a month after HD Tracks,
Mm-hmm.
and decided, well, let's see what happens if we launch a 9624 download. We did that in 2009, and I think we were the first ones to actually offer 9624 wave.
Wow.
When we saw the response, we just kept going. And then Gus said, Cookie, you're recording on DSD. Why don't you deliver DSD files? I said, Gus, nobody's got a DAC that can handle a DSD file. And he said, oh, yeah, PS3, the Sony and
Right.
Korg guys.
PlayStation. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Totally.
So they had a secret way of dealing with it. So sure enough, in 2010, we sold our first DSD 64 download.
Mm-hmm.
It was Koji Oishi from Korg who actually bought the first download. And we just never looked back. And then one thing led to the next. And pretty soon, 6 months later, Andreas Koch from Playback Design said, Cookie, we've got a DAC that'll play this. We've just been waiting for somebody to make the audio files. Andreas. Nice. So he released, launched I think it was $11,000 at that time. Mm-hmm. And then a few months later, My Tech came out with a DAC that was a beautiful thing that kind of crossed between pro audio and consumer electronics. And really, where I started to see the division is the more I went to audiophile conventions and saw there was no representation really from professional audio engineers who could actually teach and answer the questions
right
the way it was kind of disappointing. So I started going back to the pro audio folks and saying, you're missing an opportunity here.
Yeah.
But still, it took a long time. And even now, even in the last week, I run into mastering engineers who will say things like, we don't need to do a comparison test. People can't hear above X amount of hertz anyway. So what difference does it make? And what's disappointing is they don't even try to hear the difference. They don't even make an attempt. So that's kind of sad. And, essentially it's very, very difficult to do a proper comparison test. So I know how hard it is. And it's really hard to keep objective a lot of times, but I'm still really saddened that some of my best friends who are mastering engineers just refuse to even do a listening test.
Sure. No, it makes sense. I mean, I had a really interesting, I was on a panel with a bunch of producers and we were talking about, nobody shoot me. We were talking about MQA. And somebody in the audience had a bag of rocks, I'm sure. But what was really interesting was the amount of folks that were closed off to even the idea that something could potentially make a difference that they hadn't experienced, but they read so many articles or reviews or blog posts about. And so they've immediately got that herd mentality of like, no, this doesn't work, or no, this is only this way. And so I think I want to know from you, because you've really leveled up, like you have gone stratospheric with the sound quality of what you produce and what you record and what you do. Why is not just good sound, why is spectacular sound so important?
Because
you could have good sound and great sound. You can very easily.
Yeah.
But spectacular sound, right? Why is that so important?
Well, honestly, I don't know that it is that important. It's important.
And the stream is over. No, I'm just kidding. And thank you, everybody. Good night. The end of the world has arrived upon us. Thank you, Cookie.
It's important to the individual. It's important to me. And that's why I do it.
Got it.
So I do it for me first. And then when I start talking about it, other people want to experience it. But I'm not the one who's going to enforce my beliefs because, for instance, regardless of what I think of MQA, I'm not going to sell it if somebody wants to buy it. Let let everybody buy whatever format they want.
Sure.
If they want to buy a download or an MP3, or they want to stream, I don't really mind. Whatever makes them happy.
Sure.
What makes me happy is DSD 256.
So let's talk about the fact that you've got, and I know some of your artists that you work with. Like, I actually know more than I realized, which I thought was kind of interesting. When you're in the studio with them recording, do they get an education in this?
Yeah, but I would say for the most part, it doesn't matter. Again, it has to do with, it's not easy to set up a listening system. I know for the audiophiles and people who are more do-it-yourselfers, people who are a little more adventurous to make something work, they're going to try a little bit harder. But the truth is, the artists, yeah, sure, they're really impressed when they're here in the studio.
Right.
And in a lot of cases, I've given some artists DACs to even go home with. I've given product marketing people $6,000 DACs just to listen to. And they don't even set it up.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think because we live in a little narrow world of the audiophiles and better quality sound on the consumer end.
Mm.
The artist seems to be more concerned with, did I sing out of tune? Was that beat off? Can you get rid of that lip smack? And there's all these other things. Certain things are more important to an artist. They're not really listening the same way I am, which is why I started Blue Coast Records. Blue Coast Records is less about the artist, and it's more about the music I wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the music I wanted to hear, because that first 20 years when I was mostly doing the studio 24/7, I got to record a lot of really great albums.
Right.
Big albums, lots of overdubs, going out to Skywalker, you name it. And I loved those albums. But what I really loved was when the artists were sitting in a circle with no headphones and just rehearsing.
Right.
Those were the moments that really always touched me, was the passion that came from them just listening to each other.
Sure.
So when I started Blue Coast, that was one of the important things for me, was I just want the story told. I want the passion delivered, and I'm going to capture it in the best quality I can. But first is the music. Music always comes first. The delivery always comes first. Make me cry. The passion comes first.
Right.
And I will sacrifice sound quality to get passion.
That is extremely important, informative, telling, and divisive, because you and I both know that there's a lot of people out there that would not sacrifice that. In fact, they would rather turn it around the other way in some ways, So,
well, I can tell you stories. For instance, I didn't want to give up, and I still don't want to give up recording on tape. I love working on tape.
Yes,
2-inch
girl.
tape. My machine is here. It still works. I got, but, because so many people are used to working digitally.
Right.
I had to incorporate. So for Blue Coast Records, we rarely use tape anymore, but I will not use PCM recording. I'll only record 2 DSD. And then the challenges are when they're playing in the same room.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of bleeds. So we can't fix a lot of things. And we can edit some stuff, but for the most part, we're really looking for that, trying to divisively, yes, coerce the artist into the best performance of their life. Right. And they may hit one note that's a little off. Now, what I came to understand was, when I didn't make the big deep dive into Pro Tools, I noticed that a lot of studios were making a ton of money. In fact, my studio friends around here would say, Cookie, how do you stay in business? I said, well, I just try to get great recordings. And they said, yeah, but, we make so much money in Pro Tools because the artist wants us to fix this word, use auto-tune, move these beats around. They're making tons of money fixing things at the artist's whim. Now, when an artist pays me and I'm getting paid to do work for the artist, I'm going to do whatever they ask me to do.
Sure.
So yeah, I'll do that. But for my own record label, where I'm making the investment of time and money and commitment and promotion and everything else, I get to do it my way.
That's true. That's a that's a good point, I have to say. And so what is I'd love to know what some of the feedback is, like some of the most memorable feedback that you've gotten from new listeners and first-time listeners who have heard the releases that you put out, like in terms of the difference in sound quality, production, the whole, the whole thing.
Well, a lot of the feedback is because of the clarity, the sense of having the artist in the room with them, like they're right there. I had an interesting thing happen with Alex DeGrassi, who was a well-known Windham Hill artist, and I worked with Alex when I was at Windham Hill. So I think I was working on a record project for him, and I said, Alex, why don't you, stay an extra day and make me a record? And so he did. So we recorded an album's worth of material, and then as the artist does, they leave, and then I do the rest.
Right.
I mix it. It's solo guitar, so it's not it's not as hard as some things with vocals and multiple people.
Right.
But the way the artists generally look at it is, they don't have that much input. They're recording usually songs they've already recorded before. It's just in a different way. It's an alternate take. It's a live performance recorded to DSD. I'm not going to over compress it. Right. I'm going to try to keep it as natural as I can.
Right.
Alex didn't listen to that record for 4 years.
Seriously?
And then we did a show at the show, and I invited a bunch of artists when Richard was still around.
Yeah.
We had a room upstairs, and Alex had never seen anything like it.
Oh, wow.
In fact, most artists haven't. When they go to an audiophile convention where they're really admired for what they do and the sound quality they get. And when Alex had a chance to hear this record over these extraordinary systems at the show, he was blown away and couldn't understand why he hadn't really listened to it before.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, that really gives credence to the fact that there is a gap to be bridged. And I'm just going to read out a comment. Only because I was on the phone with her early today. Daniel Colley says, Cookie reminds me so much of Nellie at Audio Federation.
Who's Nellie?
Nellie, okay. Cornelia Davis is she's really cool. She's a sister. She's an audio dealer, I guess. Is that right, Daniel? Wow. She's a dealer. She's amazing. She's so sweet. And she's sort of in your neck of the woods-ish. I say that about Northern California, like it's all one village when I know that it's not. But anywhere, anybody like north of Palmdale to me is NorCal. Which is not fair because I know that it's not. But anyway, yes, Daniel, you're right. And they're both cool and spectacular. Right. She's a dealer and distributor. Speaking of which, I did want to ask you a really, really important question that's been on my mind for probably a few months, maybe more. So when you get up and go to work in the morning, because you're a woman audiophile, do you have to wear special like lady audiophile clothes? I mean, what's it like to be a woman in audio, Cookie? Like, wow, that's just, I mean, it's so like, what do those little knobs do on your like table thing? Like, wow, how does that work?
Well, I did add the Christmas lights during COVID. So I got to say that, and Jimi Hendrix back there, I did for David Solomon on a broadcasts I did with them. There's a few
Yeah.
other little things. I got
Nice.
some lava lamps up here and some other. Oh, and the accordion. Can't miss the accordion.
Yeah. I
You know.
wasn't sure. I was like, is that some sort of weird like headphone amp that you've made into like an accordion facade? That looks really cool, but it's an actual accordion.
Yeah, I keep the
Okay.
accordion under the console just to
Gotcha.
scare people. But
I love
you
that.
know,
That's great.
my day usually starts with I write 4 newsletters a week because we have like about 33,000 subscribers to Blue Coast Music and DSD Guide. So I divide it up between a few different things, like I throw out a cookies corner or that's just where I get to say whatever I want. A feature for Blue Coast Records featuring a whole bunch of whatever albums
Mhm.
we've just gotten in Blue Coast Music. So I've told myself, okay, I'm not even going to get out of bed till I write this darn newsletter. Otherwise it won't get done. And I've proven it to myself too many times. So my day starts like that.
Mhm.
And I have learned my lesson about social media. So I'm trying to limit myself
Yes.
for a while because it doesn't really bring much back anyway. I mean, I had one guy actually tell me I wasn't really a recording engineer. And I thought, okay, well, there's not very much you can do. And somebody just says, I don't believe you have a recording studio or you're a recording engineer. So you just give up. Okay, bye-bye.
And he probably doesn't have a profile picture.
Well, that's what I pointed out to him. I went to his profile and there was nothing there. And I said, so why are you afraid to show yourself, dude?
Right.
And,
Right.
So
Yes.
I always present myself, Cookie Marenco, not hiding behind anything. This is me,
Right.
but it is interesting. And then once I get up, I drive out to the ocean. It's a 20-minute drive. I get my coffee.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do my coffee thing. If I have time to do a little walk. And then I'm back and usually, well, actually the crew gets in, not my idea, but they get in at about 7 a.m. And
Seriously?
I don't, yeah. And they want to leave early too. So if
Oh,
that's what they
okay.
want,
Fair.
that's
Fair.
okay.
Sure.
And then
Right.
the days we have sessions, I don't like to start sessions before 12 or 1.
That's late.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
late.
Well, pandemic and all.
Yeah. Fair enough.
We haven't been doing that many sessions. And it used to be I did only sessions between 2 and 10.
Wow.
Because honestly, the studio part of it is not all the job. It's at best 50%,
Right.
and usually
see.
less.
Mhm.
Yeah, most of the job is the business end, the admin end, the customer service end, the talking to artist end, the listening
Right.
to demos,
Of course.
putting new music. It's all the other stuff.
Yeah. Right. So we have my good friend Barney Barnes, who was a studio owner for a long time in New York. I think you've probably messaged with him on the Next Generation Audiophiles group. He says, late, who likes to record at 9 a.m.? I do. I was calling right before the pandemic, when we were starting the new record, I was calling sessions that started at 10 a.m. and our tech call was at 8:30.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my producer hated me, could not stand it. But it was worth it because people got in there and it forced them to wake up. Nothing like bang that snare drum 15 times and let's get the good mic position on this. I'm awake. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go. And they did it,
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about early mornings, I have to say.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of neuroscientists who've done studies on this where your best attention is in the morning, which is part of the reason why I do everything else. Because I think for you as an artist, that's where you're at your peak. And for me to do a lot of problem solving, that's when I'm at my peak too.
Right.
when I'm in the studio, that's more of a serotonin moment,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of grooving. My day is over.
Yeah.
This part of the job is, what I've been doing for 40 years.
Again, which is hard because you're only 28. So,
Right.
I didn't want to say anything, but that's okay. So let me ask you this question about artists specifically when it comes to audiophilia. Why do you think most historical, like audiophile friendly artists are on the softer or ballad side? Like you never see like a prog rock band going, "Yeah, we're an audiophile band, man." Like, why is that?
There was one metal band
Oh,
that
you stole my heart.
um, I'm trying to remember. It was a pretty famous one, and a few years ago they were strong as far
Mhm.
as being audiophiles. Um, I don't listen to the music a lot. I don't remember, but there's a few pretty, you know,
But like they
rough
don't
edge guys.
record, you know what I mean? Like when you're listening, when you go, well, at least you and I know, like you go into a session and you see it's usually piano, acoustic guitar, vocal, some form of percussion or light drums with brushes and or bundle sticks, and then there's some form of strings and maybe solo woodwind or brass. There's not a lot of anything else per se, and if there is, it's just sort of light sprinkles here and there. And so I'm just curious, that's something I've always wondered, because a couple of years ago at the show in 2019 we did a live reel-to-reel recording, and there were 4 artists. I was one of them. Lori Lieberman was another, and then this guy Bob Bucciarelli, who plays steel string guitar, which really he did a great job. And then this 4th artist who's much more sort of modern, he did acoustic renditions of his like EDM stuff, which was really nice. um,
Yeah.
but it dawned on me, and Lori and I were talking about it, and it's like, yeah, it's all kind of a specific genre of music, except that it's interesting that in that case, the genre is based on the listenership and not based on the music creator, right? In terms of like what the person is creating. So, are there audiophile style artists that are prog rock, hip hop, like jazz,
Yeah.
like, harder edged things, or not so much?
Well, I would say for a long time, Dr. Dre was recording on tape well beyond, the times when things were moving to MP3s.
Hmm.
He stayed on tape for a long time. I don't know if he still is. Uh, it's funny when I've had rooms at the show in the past, you'd be amazed at the rock artist, well-known rock artists that will come in the room. Now, they're probably not going to be there to play
Hmm.
because,
Hmm.
their fees and whatever, but they will come in to look at the gear. So I think in
Hmm.
terms of being a consumer, yes. Now, whether or not they really understand from the recording end and push that,
Hmm.
that might be something else. But truthfully, even those acoustic artists aren't really
Right.
going to the extremes that a lot of artists or, some smaller labels will.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, the Elliot Shiners or
Yeah. Yeah.
Ed Cherney, when he was around, those guys are
Oh,
masters at
yes.
what they do.
Right.
And some of the best sounding records came from those guys. I don't know that they ever, well, they probably went to 192, but I don't think any of them went to DSD. And I know I've
Mhm.
talked to Elliot about, maybe something, but in any case, I think a lot of it's kind of guided by the engineers and the musicians.
Hmm.
The producer makes a lot of those decisions and whatever the studio is most used to working with.
So then let me ask you this question, because this is where you get equal parts of a bridge and equal parts of a vast cavern. On one hand, you've got digital streaming paying artists 0.0013 cents per 30 seconds. I love you, David Solomon, but streaming, right? And then on the other hand, you've got vinyl, and you've got audiophile pressings and limited edition and 180 gram, and you've got all this other stuff. And then you've got people that have, 3 tone arms on a turntable. And then you've got people that listen to Crosley, and that's okay because they're just getting started. But then there's nothing sort of in the middle because of what you just said, which is, the industry dictates sort of what goes out there. Yes, but if that's true, then vinyl is huge. And that's because it's a lifestyle, right? There's a ceremony around it, and it's largely, I think, ensconced in marketing. I mean, I'm a huge vinyl junkie. Everybody knows that. So I love it. I think it's amazing. But what do you think could be done to bring high resolution streaming, DSD, all of the high res stuff forward in a way that is cool, hip, digestible, and understandable for people that still packs a punch?
Well, I think you've made an interesting point about vinyl. It really was a promotion thing started by a promotion company that started Vinyl Day. And they stuck with it and pushed through and made it a thing. So the other aspect of vinyl that a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of is, where are the masters coming from?
Right.
I know for a fact we've recorded albums in DSD for record labels. Mm-hmm. And we'll release the DSD and all the other formats on Blue Coast Music. And then what'll happen is the label gets it, asks for the 44.1 16-bit master from the CD, and then cuts vinyl from that.
Right.
So I think it's just weird. Sad. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of the major acts are like that. And I think if you look at a lot of the ways that even, new young artists are recording at home, and then they go to, they hand it off to maybe a mix engineer. Sure. I'm not going to mention any names, but some very, very big, well-known mix engineers have told me, Cookie, you just don't understand. I'm getting 100, 200 tracks from all over the world to make this hip hop pop record.
Right.
And half the tracks are MP3 because the producers that get farmed out to do the strings or to do the background vocals or to do this part.
Right.
They're just using whatever goes to default or what they're used to.
Right. Well, they're also a lot of them are not using real instruments. They're also using just samples. And so they don't have to, it's not that they don't have to, there's nothing compelling them to move past what's right here, because the sample doesn't dictate that you have to do it that way. Right.
It's funny. Last night I was watching a Pro Tools tutorial. Mm-hmm. I'm a Pyramix person.
Okay.
I had one of the first Pro Tools situations way back, and one of the first Diaxis back in the mid 80s. But I hated Pro Tools, so I got rid of it and just stuck to tape. But, we're dealing with the reality of where artists want to have their music, or I mix it from DSD, I get sent files.
Sure.
Or mix it from PCM on Pro Tools. So I'm watching this tutorial, and I think within 12 minutes, they didn't say much more, and half the video was on how to pull up an instrument track where you can use pre-samples that you can get from the Pro Tools, the Digi or Avid library.
Right. Yeah.
And create your own tracks.
Right.
And they talked about MIDI. And I was a film composer like yourself long ago, and I understand MIDI, and I understand, triggering all these things. I just don't do it anymore.
Right.
But when you got a 12-minute video and 6 minutes of it is spent teaching people how to use these samples,
right?
Or you've got these giant sample libraries. And what I wonder is, where are the real musicians going to be coming from?
Right.
Because we're not really teaching kids how to record acoustic instruments anymore.
Right.
If you go to recording schools, they're not teaching people how to record. In fact, they didn't 20 years ago. There were a lot of schools around the country who never even had a drum set or a drummer come in where an audio student could even learn how to mic a drum set.
Right.
So it's a really sad state of affairs. And I think, at this point, I'm almost less concerned about the formats.
Hmm.
I'm going to record to DSD regardless because I like it. But I'm more concerned with where are the real musicians coming from.
Right. Well, there are. I mean, the good news is that there actually are a lot of real musicians. What's so interesting is, I had this discussion with my former music director not too long ago during the pandemic when we had to shut down the recording of the album and we all sped away in our cars because we didn't know what gaseous green cloud was over us, you know. And then we cut the entire record. I was in my home studio. He cut his guitar tracks in the closet. Our drummer played in his garage. I still have never met the bass player ever, have never even spoken to him on the phone. He just delivered tracks to us via email and we were like, great, it works. But it was an interesting time because we went from recording at Cherokee Studios in Hollywood, right? The legendary Cherokee Studios owned by the Robb brothers, and Bruce Robb was my producer. And we went from that to government shutdown, everybody working from home. We all have Pro Tools setup or DP setup or Logic setup or whatever, and everything became digital. I mean, we had real drums, real instruments, but it was funny because my guitarist was saying to me, and we all went to Berkeley, and so my guitarist was saying to me, it's so nice to play music because most of the time what he's asked to do is to play a riff, and then that riff gets sampled and repeated over and over and over again, and then he'll play another riff, and that's the next part of the song. And he's like, I'm just playing these little like 1 bar to 4 bar phrases, and that's it. And I don't actually play fluidly. And so I have the question that I ask people when you're stuck in a traffic jam. And I know NorCal has a bunch of traffic jams just like we do down here, which is like, who's the one person that's holding up the train, right? Because there's always one person in the record company chain that goes, you know what people of tomorrow will love? Shitty compressed music with lots of samples. Let's do that. And you don't hear anybody else in the room go, brilliant. You just go, somebody goes, okay, let's try it, right? And for whatever reason, it's a chain reaction. Just like the guy's driving slow and he's on the phone, and then the guy behind him slows down and the guy behind him slows down in traffic. And so I feel like we could reverse this, right? If we were to have this dialogue more openly, more fervently, and if the audiophile community, because like I've found, and I don't know, I mean, well, you're living it. I'm just finding it out now. Like a lot of my new fans are audiophiles. And the way that they listen to my music is completely different than like God bless my regular fans, but like a regular fan streams it on Spotify. An audiophile buys the physical copy, buys the t-shirt, buys the vinyl, and then spreads it around to his or her friends and then puts it on. I mean, they're just fanatical. And the love of music is so important. And so is there a way that the audiophile community can, long story long, influence the recording industry, do you think, in a more powerful way?
You know, it's a really interesting question. I think one of the things the audiophile community is going to have to get over is itself.
We should make a t-shirt that says that. And sell it.
There's so many. One of the reasons I went back to, really focused on my newsletter and the subscribers is because I think people enjoy the private conversations that we have on email. Because we respond to people. I want to talk to people. I want to hear them give me their real truth. Because I think what happens on the forums is you get a few loudmouths who take over and scare everybody else away. I mean, if I see one more post about can't hear the difference in cables just to get a bunch of clicks, I mean, really, there's only so far you can go. Right. And that just happens over and over again. And if it's not about cables, it's about DACs, or it's about formats, or it's about and so the audiophiles can't even get out of their own way to just say, look, you like it? Great. You want to buy MQA? Great. You want to buy DSP? Great. Just get out of the way and let everybody buy whatever they want. And I think if they just talked about the music and their experience to other people, that might actually go, get past some things. And maybe start to penetrate into the mainstream.
I want to ask you about cable. I want to say the C word now. I'm going to say it. Cables. I want to ask you about cables because I think you and I are, if we're not on the same side of the same boat, we're definitely traveling in the same boat, I think. And so there are people who they'll write to me or they'll write on these post boards where we're both members, and they'll say things like, cables don't matter, fight me. And then all hell breaks loose. And okay, so Hi-Fi Turtle, who is a very good audiophile friend of mine, he feels differently about cables than I do. Ray, I'm calling you out, bro, but in a nice way. And what's great is he's one of the rare people that's like, cool, you think cables matter and they make a difference? That's awesome for you. Like, right, there's no animosity there, but he feels very differently and he backs it up with his facts and he does his research. I give him a lot of credit and a lot of respect for it. And we just have differences of opinion. And people constantly are needling us like, oh, come on, you guys should talk about it. We're like, no, we're not going to, because friendship is more important and love of music is more important and commonality is more important. But I do want to say this. We do choose cabling specifically in the studio. So why, if we choose cables specifically in the studio, why don't cables seem to matter to the people on the other side of the recording part?
It's I think it's even worse in pro audio. I've had these conversations
with pro audio
friends. Yeah. Some of my dearest friends who build some very high-end gear don't believe cables make a difference. I just don't get into it anymore because I've done too many tests. We do a lot of tests for manufacturers. It's not about price.
Right. Yeah.
It's, it's about, does this cable sound different than that cable? That's it. It's not better or worse. Does it sound different? And that's how cables make a difference. Right. And in fact, just the other day, I was setting up a new system in my office and, a lot of people don't believe in burning in. I had these little, I don't want to mention any names, but they're terrific little speakers that I got for free and I haven't used them in 10 years. And so I powered them on and they sounded horrible. So I thought, I can't even believe, I just don't even believe this. So I just let them run for 4 days straight. And every day they started sounding better and better. And then I get a lot of free stuff because we test.
Sure. Yeah.
So I had a couple of DACs and I thought, well, this DAC is starting to sound pretty good. So then I swapped out and put a different DAC in and it sounded pretty crummy. And then a few days later, it started sounding better. Well, then funny enough, I had a cable that I don't use much, not going to mention names. It was a $3,000 USB cable somebody gave us. And it's really long. So that's why I was using it, because I had to run a long length. I didn't really care what it sounded like. I just needed to get length.
Right.
And then I was having some problems. So I tried a different USB cable that was probably half the price, still very expensive. And that cable actually sounded much better than the one twice the price. So all I'd like to point out to anybody who, complains about the price or why people buy it is it's not about the price. It's about the sound. Gold sounds different than silver when it comes to cable. And Mogami is not the best. I had my whole entire studio outfitted with Mogami when I rebuilt it 20 years ago. And guess what? There's better cable out there. I didn't want to know. Didn't want to know, but there is better cable out there. And I bought it. I built it myself.
So this is the other thing about audiophilia that's so interesting to me, is that a lot of audiophiles think that different equals bad. Yeah. Different is not bad or good. Different is just different.
Exactly.
It's not, and so it's just so interesting to me when somebody goes, well, that sounds different, I don't like it. Well, wait, do you not like it because it sounds different, or do you not like it because you realize there's a difference and you have formulated an opinion after hearing A and B, right? And I feel like cables are one of those highly charged, no pun intended, divisive lightning rod topics. And the violence that is spewing out of people's mouths. Like the vitriol and the venom is just unreal.
And I think that's what keeps a lot of people out of learning more about the audiophiles or attending audiophile conventions. I think it keeps a lot of people out. They don't want to go into a war zone. They don't want to feel like finger pointing all the time.
Right.
But, you know, I've played a lot of things for some of my best friends, male and female, who've gone, wow, and then have sought out better sounding gear for themselves.
Sure.
And male and female. So I think that the experience is something that everybody has to choose, because it doesn't matter to a lot of people. Having great sound doesn't matter to everybody. Being able to hear the difference, probably they can. Do they care enough to buy a better system? Maybe not. And that's okay. I mean, to me, I don't want to push anybody to buy an expensive system or to buy a $50 DSD download. You know, it's all up to them.
Right. Fair enough. We have a question here from somebody, and this person explained that they're sort of new to the hobby and new to the world. So I want to read it out because we want to educate, and thank you for asking the question. So New York Grasshopper asks, what are you using the USB cables for? I'm assuming you're asking about in the studio, or are you asking about in like a hi-fi setup? But either way, Cookie, could you explain that so that when we have new people, we want them to learn?
Yeah, I was using the cable to get into my DAC.
Okay. Gotcha.
It was just coming from the computer into the DAC.
So digital to digital.
Yeah.
Right. The way that one would use a USB cable. So, okay, cool. So thank you for, and look at that. A very new person question was asked. You answered it. Nobody jumped down their throat. Everybody's respectful. Even Audio Acoustic Engineering says good vibes bring people into hi-fi. I mean, not everybody's a troll. Look at this. I do want to say, Cookie, I wish you were more active on Instagram, and I'll tell you why. Because Facebook is filled with the trolls that we've all come to know and love, right? That give us the indigestion that cause us to drink in the afternoon. But Instagram, I have to tell you, my sister of sisters, like, so there's not a single troll that there's like one troll that I met, but he wasn't an audio troll. He was just a racist. So I sort of put him in that category. Yeah. No. But at least he wasn't an audio troll. He was just a genuine racist. And that's okay. So we blocked him. But everybody else is just so supportive and so encouraging, and we promote each other's stuff. And even when we disagree, we say, hey, I'm posting this because I don't agree, but this might be relevant to some people. And it's totally a 180. So I would encourage you to, not that you have so much free time in your day, but
well, last year I did we've got a couple of social media folks that promote for us, some volunteers, which is great.
Nice.
But for my own Instagram, sadly, I started my account with Facebook really early on, and they've done some pretty cuckoo things with my ability to get on there and how to do it.
Gotcha.
Plus, I don't use my phone that much, so it's not as easy to do it from a laptop. And I'm experimenting now actually with, a few of these programs that maybe I can post, through another program on a laptop.
Right.
But that's good to know that, that there's less trolls over there.
So no, not less trolls, almost no trolls, literally. Wow. It's just amazing. A group of loved up friends that hang out. And I've met a couple of online, like people online through it that are coming to the show that I now work with on a regular basis, that we're actually real life friends. And it's just fantastic. It's so cool. And it's a whole new generation of like all those people on the Facebook forums that are like old crotchety men that live in their mother's basement that ride the bus for half price. They're not on Instagram because they don't know how to get on there. And I'm not knocking them, not entirely, But there's
Yeah.
this new generation of people that are hungry for audio and knowledge and just an elevated listening experience. And they're so happy. Sorry, that's my dog. That's Victoria's tail. She's waking up. Can I ask you a couple more questions? I know we're supposed to like sort of stop at the hour, but I gotta know.
Yeah.
I do seriously want to ask you about so two more things. One is I hate bringing this up. I really wish this wasn't a thing, but I have to bring it up because if I don't, everybody's going to kill me. Women in audio, like, okay, so a lot of people ask me this question: how do we get more women in audio? And my thing was, okay, so just hear me out. My thing was like, you're asking the wrong question. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, the question is not how do we get more women in audio? The question is, meaning audiophile, right? The audiophile world. The question is not that. The question is, why has audiophilia historically been only a boys' club? That's the question, not the other way around. So now I'm going to put this to you.
It's the same question I hear about how do we get young people involved? How do we get more women involved?
Go to Instagram. There are plenty of us.
Exactly. I think that, the old groups need to stop and new groups need to start. And if conversations,
Speaking of new conversations.
Oh, darn. It's my dad.
Oh, goodness.
My dad actually, he thinks it's crazy when I bring him to these audiophile shows. But anyway, when the question comes up about how do we get more young people involved or how do we get more women involved, I think that you're right, that we're not doing anything that appeals to them. All they're seeing and the comments being made is, I don't want to be part of that vitriol that goes on arguing about cable. I just want to hear some great sounding music. Right. And I think if the conversations were changed and maybe the helping people or exposing people or really letting people have their opinions about even what kind of music they want to hear.
Yeah.
We might have a different audience. And I actually think it's changing.
It is. It is definitely. I agree with you. I'm happy to say, like, Stereophile profiled the show, right? Our show. And they found in 2019, I think 80% of the new people that they profiled said they found us on social media. And they also made the point that there were like a lot more women. The gap is still big, but like there were a lot more women than I think historically have been at audio shows. And I think that I would love to see, I had an audiophile tell me once, he was a headphone manufacturer, and he said, well, we're going to make you a pair of custom headphones. And I said, oh, that'd be great. And he said, we're going to send you some prototypes. And he goes, now, I'm not going to make them too tight because I know women don't like to have their ears squeezed. That is wrong on so many levels, Cookie. I don't even know where to begin with that. And so I immediately ceased doing business with this individual for obvious reasons. But it dawned on me.
You've seen the advertising that goes on. I mean, women are exploited all the time in stereo ads.
Oh, I'll tell you this. I won't say who. I will not name names because if this person is watching it, they will know, and I want them to know that I know. I was on the phone with two potential exhibitors from the show the other day, and they were going to buy a couple rooms, and their system's very nice, and we were happy to have them. And they said, yeah, let's talk about some marketing and promotional avenues that we can do. I said, great. And one guy says to the other guy, bearing in mind, I've only ever spoken to them twice on the phone. I don't know them personally. He goes, yeah, we normally have, nude models standing outside bringing in the dudes. And so I said, because I sort of didn't want to just launch right into, this is wrong and blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, that's great. Seeing as the show is run by a woman, I guess the nude models will be men. And they didn't find that very amusing. They went, oh, that's gross. And I said, really? And they said, yeah. I mean, oh, right. And then one guy goes, well, since you're a woman and you run the show, you can be our nude model.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
And I was like, your price just went up, buddy. Like a lot. A lot. Your price went up. A lot. You may not even be allowed to come to the show now. I don't know. I have to think about it.
And you see it on the forums too, like these little snippets of the wife factor. Oh my God. If I hear that one more time, they just have to stop. They don't even know they're doing it. I mean, the only good news is they're old and they're going to die.
Oh. She said it.
I said it.
Cookie's my new best friend. I love you so much. Oh my God. I would never say that's not true. I would totally say that, but I wouldn't say that because I'm not allowed to say that. No. But it is something to sort of think about, that it's about music. And I posted a picture of a naked man holding an LP in his area, right? And all of a sudden, all these dudes were like, "That's gross. Why are you posting that? That's disgusting. You shouldn't post naked people. This is inappropriate. I'm reporting you." And I was like, "Hello, did you not see the bikini model with her spread eagle and the record album? Like, what? Seriously?" I want to shout out Joey G's audio channel. Hi, Joey. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. And it's just, what can we do to change that? Other than post more pictures of nude men, apparently. I don't know. Well, I don't have a collection of them, so I don't know where to get them.
There's one thing that's going to happen to all of us. We're all going to die.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
I
have the leading edge on that one. Me and Dr. Ray Kurzweil, we got this figured out.
You and Ray, yes.
Yeah, man. Futurist.
But what I have noticed in all the years is, if I think back 40 years to when I first started, and the kinds of prejudices, and this is really a prejudice about what was going on. Yeah. They've changed, but it took talking, and until there's enough talking where people start to condemn that kind of behavior so that it stops, because whether it's racial or, if you think about it, somebody pointed out that 40 years ago, let's see, that was 40 years before.
Right.
I mean, that was the halfway point between World War II.
Yeah, right.
And where we are now. So you think about the kinds of prejudices that have gone up and down, and the sort of name calling that's happened for whatever things. Sure. I look at even what's happened with tape and all the knowledge that went along with recording on tape and the sound quality, and even having this giant console, how much things have changed. And you either adapt or you die. And I think that this generation of manufacturers who's still holding on to these old concepts are the ones that are never going to sell to women or young folks. And it will be the women and the young folks starting their own companies.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because I had this conversation with a buddy of mine who's a speaker designer in England, and we were talking about how a lot of audiophile, especially speaker designers, and also to some degree amp designers as well, they go, this is tried and true technology, and we've been using this for 35, 40 years. And he looked me dead in the face and he goes, "Do you know that if Mercedes or BMW had said that, they'd be out of bloody business?" And I went, good point, right? Because who wants to drive a car from 1992? Nobody. So why isn't audio changing? Wine changes. Everybody loves a nice, full-bodied wine that's luxurious and high-end, but even wine is changing. Cigars change, watchmakers change technology. For whatever reason, audio is like, sits on the couch like this, and I don't know why. And it's very bizarre.
It is. I mean, I have my own sorts of issues with what goes on even in the recording studio, because I'm just I'm trying to come to terms with the types of recording that are happening now, like the changeover from the way we used to record and how we got a record made. And I gotta say, I'm just not a fan of a million plugins and operating from a laptop. And, if we just want to talk about the community that used to happen in a studio that
Right.
we lost when COVID came, we suddenly
Sure.
started to realize it wasn't all about just the buttons you push and the sound and the quality and this and that. It was about getting a community of people together,
Sure.
like the conventions for audiophiles. It was a place where we had a chance to meet other people who had
Right.
similar interests. I don't know, I'm kind of torn myself. I love recording on tape. I prefer recording on tape. I'm sad that tape manufacturers aren't making tape as well as they did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sad that this stupid phone, this iPhone with a subscription to Verizon, yes, I will point it out, in the Silicon Valley on a hill, can't get a signal without dropping out between 4 and 7 p.m. I have to go back to a landline to get good, clear sound. I remember 20 years ago when we had landlines and even portable phones that you could actually have a conversation. Now, I actually have a better conversation on Zoom or on StreamYard with people, and I'm stuck in a chair in a fixed location. I can't even walk around and have a conversation. Is that really progress? I don't know.
Well, it depends, because think about it like this. If you and I were having this talk over face to face on a table over well, first of all, the bottle would be empty. But second of all, it would be progress in the sense that there's human connection there, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, yes, and this has made that possible. But I think the oversaturation of it and the fact that people are depending on it like a crutch is where the problem comes in, right? It's not about the lack of connection. It's like, oh, but I don't want to make the effort to go out and meet you for coffee. Let's just Zoom so I can wear pajamas, which doesn't seem like a great idea. So I get what you're saying. I lied.
Well,
2 more questions and then I swear I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
I want to talk about ESE.
Oh,
I need to talk about ESE. We have to talk about it because I don't know how many people just a show of like, hit that hand icon or hit a me or a not me and let me know. How many people know what ESE is in recording? I'm just curious. In the meantime, I will read out a beautiful comment by NY Grasshopper. Some old guys got nothing better to do than take their mentality from decades ago and apply it to now. They need to consider a little thing called retirement at this point. Oh, Lord have mercy. Woo!
Yeah.
Woo! Okay, so Joey knows what ESE is. I'm not surprised. A few people don't know what ESE is. So I'm assuming we've got a 4 to 1 ratio here. So let's say, what is it? Let's explain it. Let's explain how you developed it, and how important it is and how it's changed recording.
Well, ESE stands for Extended Sound Environment. And I wanted to develop a technique at the time. This was like 2002, that was actually started as a surround technique. And I wanted to get a sound that felt like that those musicians were in the room with you. So we spent some time, quite a bit of time at a well-known studio down the street from Skywalker that doesn't exist anymore, but it was a wonderful studio. I didn't want to do it in my own place. I wanted to do it at the top studio so nobody could say anything about anything.
Sure.
So we tested a lot of different situations and scenarios. We set up a 5-1 environment in the control room. And what I wanted was to be able to walk out into the playing room, the performance room, and when I went into the control room, hear the same sound. That's what I was trying to achieve. I really wanted to feel like when I went out to hear the musicians play and then I walked back in, I was hearing the same sound. So it wasn't about having like the tambourine in the rear left or this or that. It was a natural sound that I could, we were using what's called ITC configuration. so that if I stood outside of the surround circle of speakers, that I could still see the musicians almost visually in the center of those speakers.
Right.
That was the original intention. I spent a lot of money on that recording and didn't even release it until 2007.
Wow.
I was going to give up. I never intended to start a label. What I wanted was to create an experience. So we trademarked extended sound environment. I wanted a word that I could attach to it. So when I talked to people about it, I didn't have to go through the whole dialogue of what it meant. I could just say extended sound environment. It would trigger oh, that's what it is.
Right, right, right.
Well, I had a lot of people interested, but they all said, well, we can't afford to make a record like that, but we sure would like a second recording from you, Cookie.
Of course.
Okay. So after that, I couldn't afford to do the surround part anymore. So we continued to modify it and basically brought it down to its essence, which is no headphones, no overdubs. Musicians are playing in the same room.
Right.
And it's up to me to capture the experience. But first, what I do is I get them positioned so that they can hear each other. Like that rehearsal room I was talking about before, my favorite environment. I wanted them to just be able to hear each other. And there's sacrifices to be made.
Sure, of course.
You know, you can't record a full drum kit that way. There's only one drummer that has been able to do it up till now. It's this guy named Brain, who is my favorite drummer. And, you know, he plays with Guns N' Roses, Primus, Tom Waits, you name it. But he is our Blue Coast drummer because he will play a shaker this loud.
Right.
He'll take a brush and play it on the side of a lamppost.
Right. Yeah.
So that he can hear the musicians and react. And that's what I'm looking for with extended sound environment. So that's what it's boiled down to today is trying to create that experience of the musicians in two channels being in the room with you.
So Barney has a question, which it's a fair question. I think I understand. I just did a video on the opposite of that. So I sort of understand what you're doing. But Barney's question is, isn't that what the Beatles did, play in the same room together? And I mean, yes, but that's not what George Martin was hearing necessarily. Is that fair to?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different experiences. This had to do with acoustic recording. Also part of the ESE requirement is tape, which that would qualify, although some of the later Beatles recordings had overdubs. You know, they just did sound on sound and whatever else techniques.
Right.
Sure, a lot of bands play in the same room. Orchestras play in the same room.
Right.
One of the other requirements is we record to tape or DSD. And I'm not opposed to other people using extended sound environment as a trademark for their sound. What it would indicate is if they're following the rules, it would tell the person buying the music that these people played together in the same room without headphones, without overdubs, went to DSD, and hopefully didn't overcompress. You know, we've got certain things that's
right. Yeah.
But well, I'm not opposed.
I think it's great. I mean, so the video that I did was about when people talk about how they want to market stuff and they go, our speakers sound so authentic. It's like you're in the room with the artist when they recorded it. And the video that I made was like, have you ever been in a live room? You know what crap it sounds like in there, especially if there's a drummer and a bass player and there's all this bleed and you're like, how is this ever going to turn into that? You never want that on your speakers. That would be the crappiest speakers in the entire world if that happened. So how do you mitigate that in ESE? Because is it because of the instrumentation? You're not using you're not using a full kit and you do have limitations. Is that what allows it to come to fruition gracefully and effectively, or are there other things technically that you're doing?
Well, there is, and I think you've brought up a really good point, which is what we hear in the room is not what comes out of the speakers,
Right.
even in
Totally.
ESE. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Even in ESE, because it would sound terrible.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't sound good. So
Yeah.
it's a trade-off. What ESE is really about is the musicians are not being affected by wearing a set of headphones, that the
Mhm.
focus is on listening to each other and playing at a dynamic level together so they can actually hear each other. Because
Oh,
sometimes,
beats
as you
still in my
know,
heart.
when
Yes.
you're in headphones,
Yep.
if the vocalist may not be hearing enough of themselves, and then they'll sing
Right.
out of tune because they
Yep.
can't breathe
Right.
correctly, or the
Yep.
piano player can't hear the vocalist, doesn't know where they are, so the groove is off. You know what happens when a bass player and a drummer can't hear each other right? You got no groove.
Yeah.
So I know that if I can get them to hear each other, I'm going to get a passionate performance, and that's what
Mhm.
I'm looking for.
Right.
Now, what comes out of the speakers, I will treat it in a manner that the vocals have to be louder than they're probably happening in the room.
Mhm.
In,
Mhm.
in some in some cases, especially with, for example, we just released a record we did 10 years ago called Mutineer.
Mhm.
Jenna Mamina singing
Oh,
vocals.
yeah. Sure.
Yeah, with Matt Rawlings, great piano player from Nashville.
Mhm.
And we invited the Bay Area Audiophile Society over. And in the background, what a lot of people don't know, are 25 audiophiles sitting quietly listening.
Is that Leslie's group?
No, this was
Okay, this is different.
before.
Oh,
Yes,
okay. Got it. Got it. Got it.
right. The group, the Bay Area group, dissolved, became San Francisco.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it.
So this actually predates that. So we had 25 audiophiles coming in, and what they would always say is they'd come into the control room and I would play it back. And I do add reverb, I do add touches.
Sure.
I'll EQ if I have to. I try not to do too much, but I am going to try to make it a pleasant listening experience, something I want to listen to, really.
Yeah.
And they'll say, wow, we were shocked at how soft Jenna's vocals were.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then they hear it in the control room and the vocals are way up.
Right.
But the truth of it is that record is not going to sell if you can't hear the vocals. I mean,
of course.
so, the ESE recording style isn't that I'm trying to mimic what's in the room. I'm actually just trying to get a passionate performance.
Mhm.
And there's an illusion of hearing what the musicians are doing, but that's what they were doing. It's just I'm changing the balances.
Nice. I dig it. Speaking of speakers and what's coming through the speakers, take us through your rig. I need to know what we're looking at, because you're on a screen that's this, so it's kind of hard for me to see everything. But tell us about the gear. This will be the final question. The board,
Okay.
the speakers, the cables. What does Blue Coast operate with, if I may ask?
Well, this is my studio, and these are more about, I guess you'd call it professional audio equipment.
Sure.
I have a set of Sony AR1s upstairs in another listening room that I use for listening back for masters and keep the musicians in. Those are great with a Nelson Pass amp. In my own home living environment, I have the JMR, Jean-Marie Renault Orpheos with Nelson Pass amps. And in my office right now, I've got some little NFTs that I just love, and they're cheap and they sound fantastic, and they're about this big.
Nice.
Yeah. Now in here, I've got the JMR Offrons are the gold ones.
Yeah.
And then those are NFTs. I think they were called the Moos. They were professional. Right next to there's a little tiny speaker, little cube. Those are the Oratones.
Yeah. Right.
Actually, those I'm powering with a giant Macintosh amp, which is kind of funny because these speakers are like $60.
Right.
But,
right.
You might remember the days when we used to take things out to the car to listen to. So
oh yes.
that's what those are for. In the
Nice.
back, we've got some Tannoy golds from.
Hey.
Those are, I think, my first speakers in my first control room. And then way back there are some. They're giant Myers speakers that I love, but right now my amp is busted, so I haven't been able to listen to those.
Wow.
So, and what I've got, I've got a lot of, I got a lot of Nelson Pass amps. I love them.
Nice, solid. And what's the board?
The board is a 48 channel sound workshop that I've had for a long time. I bought it from Pat Gleason. If you know him, he's down in LA now.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
And so he had it pretty outfitted, but when he moved to LA, I bought the console and way over there. Well, there's the accordion, of course, my $100 toy accordion that I threaten people with. And then just behind that is the Lexicon 224 XL, which at the time I bought that in the 80s.
Wow.
Oh boy, my family was so mad at me. I could have bought 2 brand new Volkswagen cars.
But you still have that.
And it still works.
Right. And the Volkswagen would have gone probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And then, there's a whole rack of other stuff. Millennia preamps that I love. I've got some Neve preamps, Manley.
Yeah.
Preamp. This is Manley.
Nice.
Bandana. And a whole bunch of old Lexicon AMS stuff that, I bought in the 80s and 90s, and I still love it. And I just am saddened by actually what's happened to gear.
Sure. Yeah.
Parts get expensive. It's harder to buy, so things get cheaper. And truthfully, the burning in thing happens with pro audio gear. So the longer you have it and use it, it just starts sounding better and better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm so happy. Oh my gosh. I'm so happy that we got to do. We've been talking about doing this for the better part of a year, I think, almost, right? So, well, we've gone way over the hour. You've been so generous with your time. We're almost at 90 minutes, and I know you got other things to do, so I want to let you go. But Cookie, thank you. I cannot thank you enough. This has been, I love all my guests equally, but you're my hi-fi sister and my pro audio sister, and I love that we were finally able to sit and chit chat. And I'll see you on the post boards, trolling away, girl.
Cheers.
It'll be great. So everybody, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned next week when my guest is Adam Somer from Somer and Associates. I will be posting that on Wednesdays as usual, and it'll be next Friday. And if you haven't yet entered the SVS giveaway, Joey wrote Great Stream Ladies, but he spelled it with 2 S's, and I swear I wrote Great Stream Lesbians. Sorry, Joey. No, he wrote ladies, but it was misspelled, and my contacts are getting dry. So anyway, if you haven't entered the SVS giveaway, you have a chance to win a $1,300 2.1 Prime SVS system. Head over to my Instagram channel at that hi-fi girl. You'll see what to do. The winner is being announced next week. It says in the thing. So go check that out. And everybody, check out Blue Coast Records and Cookie Marenco if you live under a rock and this is your first time. No, I'm just kidding. If this is your first time learning about Cookie, please go check her out. She's a staple in our industry and in our community. But yes, home theater fanatics, go enter. Totally. You're qualified to enter. And just say hi to all of your wonderful artists for me, because I actually know quite a few of them, and I didn't realize that. So, and we will see you on Facebook and Instagram and everywhere else. And Cookie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good night, everybody. See you next week.